Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are physicians and leaders who are also trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, and integrative medicine.
We are also mothers, spouses, sisters, daughters, aunts, and friends.
In this podcast, we share candid, heart-centered, loving, science-based, thoughtful, and often fun conversations about the challenges life throws at us.
With our collective experience of over 30 years in physician and personal wellness, we reflect and offer pearls of wisdom for navigating life's challenges with more ease.
From parenting, marriages, money scarcity, cancer survivorship, uncertainty, challenges in practicing medicine, we cover it all.
We invite you to refresh your perspective and empower yourself with mindset, mindfulness, and other well-being tools that actually work. A quick reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice. Welcome to our episode on how to manifest a dream.
A week ago, I bought my dream, and today's episode is to share the story of manifesting a dream and all the emotions that come with it. What if instead of meeting others' expectations, you exceeded them? What if you let your hopes and not your hurts shape your future? Today, I will share the story of my journey, long journey of fulfilling a dream, and some of what I believe is essential to manifest dreams. I hope that you will leave realizing that dreams are available to all of us. They do not just happen by wishing or hoping or even luck. They require belief in yourself and the possibility of that dream coming true, mindful and intentional actions along the way, trust, patience, and a boatload of thought work and courage.
Inviting you to take a moment to arrive for the story that will be shared. If it's safe for you to do so, inviting you to close eyes or lower your gaze a few inches in front of you, noticing what's here for you now, any anticipatory thoughts, any emotions, any body sensations, realizing this is our truth in our experience right here, right now. Allowing our mind and our bodies to be here at the same time, ready to pay attention with loving presence for Jessie's sharing. As you're ready, blinking open eyes, letting the light back in.
Thank you for the practice to start us off, because as I told you, sharing about your dreams and especially about manifesting dreams and having them come true is super uncomfortable. So I appreciate the intentional attention to being mindful and bringing your mind and body into the same spot when you feel a little anxious. Before we dive into the story of my dream, I want to reflect on the fact that this is episode 200, which of our dream of creating a podcast, and 200 episodes. That's pretty darn cool. And we are about 125 to 130,000 downloads. And how this podcast dream has come true is actually very similar to many of the things that I will share about the other dream. And we are intentionally releasing the Manifesting of a Dream podcast for episode 200. So thank you so much to you, Ni-Cheng, for being part of this dream and creating this podcast. And in celebration of our 200th episode, we want to nudge you to share it with others, spread it far and wide so that as we move from 200 to 300, more and more people will take advantage of it and learn from it. And hopefully, it will make the world a more beautiful, loving, and kind place.
Deep bow of gratitude to you, Jessie, for being co host and oftentimes recording solo casts and interviews. And um, yeah, this has been a lovely journey, and I look forward to many more episodes.
It takes a
And thank
village.
yeah, and thank you, dear listener, for supporting us along the way and for episode 200, because without the ongoing listens, we probably would have pivoted. And here we are, 200 episodes later.
And I'm going to throw out an invitation, which I haven't run by you, but you're going to agree, which is if you happen to be a podcast listener and this podcast has changed something for you or been helpful for you, and you're willing to come on the podcast and do a podcast with us, we would love to chat with you and share it as a podcast about the impact of the podcast and how some of the tools that we have shared have helped you. I hear from a lot of people who come to coach with me that they listen to the podcast and I didn't know they were listening. And I hear from a lot of people who come to retreats who listen to the podcast and I loved this episode and this changed my life. It would be really fun to share some of those on this podcast. So send us an email. You can respond to any of the emails we send out about the podcast directly and we will get back to you. Onward to manifesting a dream. Starting by sharing about dreams is uncomfortable, as I mentioned. Dreams in and of themselves are very personal. Beyond that, sharing successes for me is very uncomfortable. I was raised not to do that. I was raised that if you have a success, you kind of put it under the radar and that other people would, not might, would judge you if you shared a success. And I was also taught that having a dream come true is pretty much luck. Like it's a dream come true kind of just means it just happened. And that there wasn't something that you did to manifest it, which based on my experiences, all the dreams that I have manifested have, there's always a luck component, but it is never just luck. It's a lot of hard work and courage. And so I share this fully knowing that you will all tell your own story about how my dream came true and the value of it and the validity of it and all the things. And I also don't share it to make others feel bad, or we just recorded an episode on compare and despair. There will be no comparing and despairing from this dream. And I hope that it inspires you because I was very much inspired by others who fulfilled their dreams. And it was one of the reasons I knew that it was possible. And so I hope that in sharing this journey today, to be the person who inspires you to follow through and begin on manifesting whatever your dream is. So I offer this as a gift. But I want to ask you, Nicheng, at the outset, you also encouraged me to record the podcast. And what about it resonated? Why did you want me to share?
Well, I want you to share the story of when the dream arose and then the trials and tribulations, because it really wasn't like a very straightforward journey and it had a lot of
Yeah.
turns and
Mm-hmm.
detours. And I wanted you to share partly because I think that what you've done and what you've created is going to be helpful for people to know what's possible. So,
Love that. And I also wanted to record this not alone, but with Nicheng because she has been the person who I've reached out to along the way with many of the ups and downs. She's been privy to all of the, as you said, struggles and tribulations and moments of self doubt. And she has been a huge resource and a reminder that getting help helps, and having someone who you can connect with and share vulnerably your worries and fears and dreams is really valuable. And I encourage all of our listeners to find someone. And you don't find that person without sharing. So, the story, this dream of manifesting a new home and retreat center, which as of a week ago, yesterday, I own. And it has been a long journey. It emerged originally out of my Sagrada retreats, that I love doing these retreats and I love being in nature. And every time I was here, which I am today, actually, fun place to record this,
Mm.
I feel the most like myself and I feel the most alive and the most energetic. And I have the most to give and to bring. I work at retreats 12, 14-hour days, and I'm exhausted at the end, and I have never feel better. And I just am able in certain environments, I realized that place was very, very important to me, to um, bring to the world something just a whole other level. And I love it. And working with people in person is absolutely essential to me. I do most of my work on Zoom and I love it, but I also need pockets of working with people in person and being in nature and teaching yoga in nature, and also getting to work with people intensively. And so getting to blend together all of the modalities that I love to teach. So it emerged from my time at Sagrada. And after doing more and more retreats here, it occurred to me that I should find a place to do this for myself. Because, of course, when you don't own a place, who knows what would happen? And certain things, even at Sagrada, there have been some caretakers who are less than helpful. For the last 2 years, there have been an amazing couple here who actually add to my retreat significantly with energy work and body work. And I have become likely lifetime friends with them. But that's not always the case. And sometimes you come and here, the kitchen, for example, we bring almost a whole car full of kitchen for Mark now because it's a retreat center that's used for lots of retreats. So what was here last time is not always here next time. And so now we bring an entire box on our roof full of kitchen supplies for Mark to use. And all of that driving back and forth takes energy, shifting your space takes energy, and it adds a lot of work to each retreat. And so I really wanted to find my own space. So in early 2022, I actually put out into the universe that I wanted to find my own place. And one of the things that I do at retreats is I gift wish bracelets to people. And I'm actually going to do a podcast with the owner of the bracelets that I have been buying. I'm on her podcast shortly, but she's going to come onto this podcast and talk about wishing as a mindful practice. But I have bought hundreds of her bracelets because I give them out at retreats. And I encourage people to put wishes in them. And I was gifted one by one of my coaches early on. And I put this retreat center in it in 2022, just so you know. And in there's stones of different types. And the bracelet name was wealth and wisdom. And both things, I don't have a wealth mindset or an abundance mindset, or I didn't at the time. And so I put it in there in 2022. And I did start looking. And in the summer of 2022, I actually found an amazing property. I don't know if Nicheng knows this story, up north of Mendocino. It was amazing. And I went up there actually for my birthday, and we looked at the property, and it was just gorgeous, perfect, gorgeous. Not quite affordable, but maybe we could negotiate. Um, it had some problems, as does every property that is a retreat center. And honestly, if you can afford it, it always has problems, by the way. So we went to visit it twice. Meanwhile, it's about a 4.5 hour drive from my house. And I really, really loved it. But in the end, it was too far away. And I'm because this is a fun podcast and it's a story. The reason that it was kind of a distress sale is, and it's no longer for sale because the FBI is involved, which is why it had problems. But the people who owned it ran OM retreats, capital O, capital M, which stands for orgasmic meditation. And they were into these tantric love retreats. And now they're being investigated by the FBI, and the property is caught in that. And they were trying to sell it before that. It also didn't have any permits and a number of other things. And it was 4 hours away from the airport. So it wasn't right, even though when you got there, you were like, wow, it was right. And um, but I learned a lot from looking at it, and I learned a lot about how you evaluate properties with septic systems and wells and agricultural permits and rivers running through them and all the things. And that you probably, my husband, who researches everything, he found out about all the background. He was like, yeah, we probably don't want to get involved in this, which actually makes sense as to why it was priced the way it was. Anyway, so that was our first foray into retreat centers. And then in the fall, a couple months later, I found another property that I loved, which was not for overnight retreats, but was for day retreats. Farther north than the property I just bought. But it had the most amazing outdoor, indoor kitchen retreat space. And I do a lot of 1 day retreats for local healthcare systems. And it did have space where I could have done, one-on-one retreats. It was amazing. So I looked down on a Sunday and my husband hadn't looked at it. And I was like, we just have to try to buy it. And thankfully he trusted me. So we did try to buy it on Monday. It was sold on Monday. But it sold for $1 million over asking, all in cash. And I don't have any of that. So didn't get that one, even though it was beautiful and perfect, but it wasn't meant for me. But it did give me the idea. And I like to say, as we manifest these dreams, you just continue. You are patient, you are persistent, and you learn from each of your, I won't call them failures. I might call them all adventures. The first one was just a big adventure. The second one was an adventure in marriages, like having someone trust you and you trusting yourself enough to have them trust you. And also in California, when you buy property, you do have to put in an offer the very next day after you see it, if you like it. And anyway, so it gave me this idea, though, that I also might like to have a place where I could do 1 day retreats, which I had never, that wasn't really part of my original retreat vision. I had been doing them at Green Gulch and at Pie Ranch, which are both gorgeous, and I love them. And it just occurred to me that I wouldn't have to book a year in advance, for example, if I had my own spot. And so it added into my vision of what I was looking for, constantly growing. So you might think the story is really interesting, but it gets better. So keep believing and trusting in the process are the words that I would add here. And my words for 2023 were I practiced being satisfied with where I was, being deliberate, and being assured. And I mentioned those because they came in handy. And so about a year ago, actually exactly a year ago of the recording of this podcast, I was at Sagrada leading a retreat. And I got an email from the owners of Sagrada wanting to sell me the property. Immediately, I was like, okay, well, whatever it takes, I'm going to do that. And as you well know, since I don't own Sagrada, it didn't work out. I learned a lot. But the process of this, I learned a ton about the property. I learned a ton about managing wild pigs and septic systems and all kinds of things. How about that? I'll just say that permitting and the way that things are done in different counties in California. And also that when someone creates something themselves, which I totally understand, they overvalue it. And so this property was built by these current owners themselves. And they lived here for many, many years. And they overvalued it by quite a lot based on any other property in the area. Now, we actually, the whole conversation has very much solidified our relationship and made our working relationship much better. And so at that point, there was no negotiating. As my husband said, you can't negotiate from those far distances. You don't negotiate across an ocean, for example, when you need to build a little wooden bridge across a river. So we also actually weren't ready to move 4 hours from our house because I had a son who was now about to be a senior in high school. So the timing was also not good. So what I loved about this process, the learning here, is one, that what you thought was your dream might not be your dream, but it might be the bridge to your dream. Two, that you can, there are amazing humans in the world where they help you see, we are very aligned with the owners of Sagrada, and the property is not actually for sale. They wanted to not give it to us, sell it to us, because they saw that we were very aligned with their mission, and that we had a deep love of the place, and that we could actually, in their vision, we would carry on what they were doing. And they wanted us to carry it on like for like what they were doing and just add in what we were doing. Um, and so I really loved that idea that they were sort of seeing their journey come to close, and they thought this might be a beautiful way. So in the end, they've actually not sold it, and it's not for sale. And we've had a few other conversations about it, specifically when this possibility of the new property came up. And so what we agreed, you know, 11 months ago was that we would revisit it when my son was graduating, and they would decide what they were up to. And they actually weren't, when someone's not really ready to sell, there's no conversations happening anyway. So we ended up revisiting it under very different circumstances after we'd already found the place that we've now purchased. And so again, I am on all the property lists for the places that I might like to live. And actually, there's only two, which was down here near Sagrada. And I had been looking for 2 years, as well as north of me in West Marin near Point Reyes. And so I get lists, and that's where all these places had shown up, except for the Mendocino property, which came through my mother-in-law. She knew I would like it, and she knew someone who lived on this random deserted road and thought it was an opportunity. So you just never know. And I think that's the other thing, is when you have a dream, tell people about it. My mother-in-law knew about my dream. So when she heard about this, she sent it my way. And I think if you don't put it out there, no one knows. So the other learnings from the Sagrada property were, in trying to make it work, I had gotten pre-approved for a loan. I had researched loans. I knew about all of the wild animals, growing vegetables in nature, water, septic tank systems, generators, all of the things. I knew all about those. And so when this next property came up, I was much better prepared. And I also was kind of clear that there were things that I would do differently, and ways I would set it up differently. And when you are looking at things, you can also rub against, like, oh, I would do this differently. I would do that differently. I would want this setup. You and I were talking about Sagrada versus the newer property, and you were noticing that Sagrada is very rustic, for example, and the newer property is less rustic, and Sagrada is farther away from the airports, and requires, so there's always different things you can think, oh, well, that would be, if I had my absolute wish list, and no property has your absolute wish list, that would help. So the Sagrada experience a year ago got me to sort of double down on my belief that I could do it, though, because if that could happen, pretty much anything could happen. And how amazing would that be? And so one requirement for manifesting a dream, I just want to point out, is belief. And so putting it in that bracelet that I wore, and continuing to talk about it, continuing to research it, continuing to just let those emails flow into my life. I almost look at them every day for 2 years. And if you realize I got an email every day, only 3 places ever were the right place. And you kind of know that. So in March, early March, an email came into my email, and I said to Mark, we need to go see this place. It could work. And So in California fashion, we went the next day because that's how these things go. And I literally pulled in and was like, it's going to work. I didn't even need to see the rest of it because that is the trusting your intuition. And also, this wasn't my first go round, but I was like, this, like, once we arrived and I felt the energy of the place was very clear to me that it was going to work. And I did, check it all out and check out the space and check out the light and all of the things. But it was very clear to me that it was going to work. And it had a lot of things that the other places didn't have. Does it have everything? No, of course not. But it had a lot of things that I was looking for, and that would be really fun. So trusting your intuition is really powerful. And I have to say that I have been practicing trusting my intuition for the last few years. So I felt really clear on what was intuition, not what I should do or wanted to do or was supposed to do. In fact, I wasn't supposed to do this at all. All of the financial people would say, stay in your house, don't take a bunch of risk, right? But that's not how dreams happen. So we put in an offer 2 days later, and I have to say, I didn't think we'd get it, but then we did. So, so now here we are, um, owning this property. And I do want to say, in case you think, oh, just here we are, it took a lot of hard I won't say manual labor, thought labor, conversation, negotiations, loans, researching all these things, learning more about them. In flood insurance, fire insurance. Like if you think dreams are just dreams, they're not. They involve a lot of insurance and a lot of contracts and a lot of risk and a lot of overwhelm, I will say. Though I have worked really hard to stay away from the word overwhelm and just focus on the fact, and this is what I just keep saying, in the end, it's going to be amazing. In the end, it's going to be amazing. Even though the process of purchasing it and now the process of selling my own house is no small project. So, getting to the other side, my thoughts for all of you who are building your own dream: continue to believe in your vision. Um, Usually, our vision comes, I often say, 2 to 3 years before the thing comes. And that's, we just have to be patient and believe in the process. And the other tool that I think is really important is become someone who has your dream. So for me, I had kind of already become someone who owns a retreat space. I did enough of the retreats in enough different places. It gave me the knowledge and the belief and the energy of someone who could do that and was that. And so that can help you begin to make decisions. And then believing again and believing again each step of the way that no, I believe this could still work. Even though it hasn't shown up yet, it probably could. And imagining possibilities that don't exist and being open to them so that I, came back to, I just didn't have a vision that this place was even out there. And then there it was. You don't know what's out there till you get there. Getting super duper creative was also really important, really powerful.
So, as you so bravely and transparently shared your journey, something that arose for me that I think is a important tip is the idea of timelines. So, part of manifesting a dream this big and that has the potential to bring about this much change in your life, talking about selling your current home and then moving to the new property, for instance, the timeline oftentimes can be like goalposts, like checking in
Mm-hmm.
with goalposts. But in order to truly realize and to get the right fit and all of the circumstances aligned such that it would work, the timeline kind of got blew out of the water.
Yeah.
Like you really didn't end up having like a deadline that by a certain
Yeah.
year or a certain date you absolutely needed to own a retreat center. And I think that spaciousness
Mm-hmm.
that you allowed for yourself was really crucial in um, opening yourself to the opportunity of what ended up being just the right fit.
That is so true. If you think about how we often have, these are my goals, and that's sort of the mantra of how to make things happen. I'm going to own this by this date, and I'm going to make it happen, and this is what I need to do. And that was not at all how this happened. It was just something that I wanted for my life. And I slowly became a person who that could work out for. And, you know, I had to build a business that would be able to use it in that way, and also be creative in what else the space can be used for, and be creative in the ways that it would be used, and to have lots of different options and ideas about how to support it.
And I'm also going to reflect back to you, Jessie, that had the journey not been as circuitous and full of adventure, from
I got to go so many
orgasmic
amazing
meditation
places. Yeah.
retreat centers to um, literally doing like a pro con with you on
Yeah.
the phone about Sagrada versus the new
Yeah.
property. Um, had the process not been as what I like to say as lovingly drawn out as it has been, um, you would not have garnered the expertise that was needed to learn about the septic tank systems,
Yes.
to know about the permits, to know about all of these different insurances that you needed to own a property like this. And so, in owning your journey and in traversing the process so intimately, um, that helped realize the dream.
Yeah. So, a few more things I want to share before we close, because I want this to not just be a story, but to have tools for those of you who might want to manifest your own dream. Is connect with how you've set yourself up for success. We don't do that. We're just like, oh, I just got here. But when you do that, you can see that you can do that again. And that allows you to take steps that are really, truly uncomfortable, and have the knowledge and trust and nimbleness to move forward. Because while you might say I've manifested my dream, I haven't actually yet. I mean, I have to some degree, but it's going to always continue to evolve. And I know that it's not like it's going to be, oh, amazing and easy once you get there. Remembering that you have tremendous problem solving skills. Anyone in medicine has tremendous problem solving skills. Be willing to embrace the self doubt. It doesn't mean you can't do it. Of course, you don't know how to do it. And of course, you think it won't work because it's never worked before. And trust those helping you is another one. When we get into something like this, you have to trust that other people can explain things and educate you and know about things that you don't, and be very hands wide open. I like to know everything, because in medicine, we like to know everything. But there are things here that I'm just not going to know. And I'm just going to do my best. And I'm going to be open to their expertise. So staying in your own lane. Mark has a lot of different lanes than I do. And that's very helpful. And me not getting in his lanes is very helpful. And then practicing gratitude, also gratitude for the opportunity. Actually, I'm going to say gratitude for myself, because it's not like this just happened. We spent 20 years working super duper hard, and making conservative decisions, and it's not like this just happened. We also had some support of others. We had to get help from other people. We couldn't do this all on our own. And there are other people out there who support dreams, as it turns out. And they believe in you, and you believe that you can do it. And so, practicing gratitude for people that believe in you and support, whether that be, knowledge or other, and for opportunities, can be a really, really powerful way to move forward.
And with loving amusement, I also want to reflect that perhaps this might be the best ad for wish bracelets. Like, how powerful is this wish bracelet?
So, well, it's only as powerful as the wish within it, and the wisher and the wisher's ability. But she is actually coming on our podcast very shortly, and super fun. She and I recorded a podcast about this in October before I made this happen. but we talk about it in the episode. And serendipitously, somehow the podcast never came out, like it just got forgotten about. And then we reconnected, and I was like, oh, it did happen to that. And she was like, gosh, I don't know. She had been on my list to see if she wanted to come on our podcast. And so it's being released in May, which is just awesome. So what you won't know when you listen to it is it was recorded before the dream happened. So that's pretty funny.
Mhm.
And yes, it is an ad, but what I really think it's an ad for is setting an intention and being connected to your wishes. Because if you don't put them out there, nothing happens. So, reflection questions for all of you. What is your dream? Let it be seen. You don't have to pursue it yet, but write it down and let it be seen. What do you want to do with your one wild and precious life? And what will the world miss out on if you don't? So come join me in the fall uh, in my new space. I will still be at Sagrada to some degree, though less frequently. And so those retreats will be of limited availability. But I would love to share this dreamy space with you. It is full of love and kindness and light and hope and inspiration. And I think that is what I have to share today. I want to share at the end of this. Sharing something like that takes a lot of energy
Mm.
and a lot of emotion. So I don't know what all of you will receive on the other end, but I hope that you enjoyed it and enjoyed and took some inspiration for yourselves from listening. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
And deep bow of gratitude to you, Jessie, for putting yourself out there this way. And congratulations.
Thank you. You're going to be one of the first people to get to stay in it. I'm going to host Ni Chang while we host Connect in Nature, um, as she's going to be my first guest. So I will see, I might see you before, but I will see you at Nicasio Creek Farm, which is what I have decided to name it because the Nicasio Creek runs through it. And by the time Ni Chang shows up, it will also have a yoga studio, which I will put out in this podcast for any of you still listening to the very end, is going to be called Peaceful Heart Yoga.
Welcome to this mindful moment offering. I invite you to close your eyes if it's safe for you to do so, or you lower your gaze a few inches in front of you. Inviting you to settle into this moment, this pause, leaving everything that is to come at the door, fully arriving for this brief practice together. After hearing about dreams, asking yourself the question, what are my dreams? And then next, inviting you to ask yourself this question, what steps have I already taken to help fulfill my dreams? And next, inviting you to wander and ask yourself, what steps would I like to take next to help fulfill my dreams? Letting go of any judgment that might arise for how far you've come or how seemingly small a step or steps you've taken or not at all. This is simply an inner reflection with curiosity about your dreams. And I invite you to journal about these answers to these questions. What are my dreams? What steps have I already taken to fulfill my dreams? And what steps would I like to take next? As you're ready, coming back to this present moment, opening your eyes, letting the light back in. Thank you so much for practicing with me.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We encourage you to dive into the show notes for each episode for more learnings and resources.
We also invite you to take a listen to the many other Mindful Healers podcast episodes. And please share the podcast far and wide with colleagues, friends, and family.
If our message and approach resonate with you, we would love to work with you.
When you listen to a podcast, you consume information, but when you work with us, you can actually practice and change.
We offer coaching and mindfulness experiences, talks, workshops, retreats, and more. Connect with us at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
The content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. We invite you to participate in the mindful moments we offer at the end of most of our podcasts, but please only do so safely.